Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's and proclamation news and gatherings, ladies and gents. Welcome on board. Thank you all so much for coming in today at PNG Proclamation News and Gatherings. It's the 19th of September 2020. It's the prodigious, it's the prominent professor at PNG. PNG sometimes talking on globalisation, feminism, UK politics, UK politics. PNG is becoming absolute populism. Looking at the analytics, we're looking at the blueprint of Parliament, how, where, why, and when it was set up. I mean, there's commandments that Jesus set up in the Bible that we have to go by, if you believe it or not, but they're good guidance to make us act in a sensible mannerism. We have speed limits. We've got orders at work how to put electric together so you don't blow yourself up. If you didn't go by guidelines, we'd all be dead. So I'm just giving you a bit of it's important to know the analytics and the blueprint of Parliament and why and how it's set up. Um, I'm just going to talk off the cuff of my own intelligence around Parliament before we get into. I know we've done the blueprint without even going into research because I've studied my academic integrity is arts and humanities, which is history and politics. So the first part of the module is who set up the blueprint of Parliament, and why. Why we have guidelines, and I call it guillotine. A guillotine is actually a thing. I call it a structure, but it is to chop your head off. In the old days, um, we've got a slight issue with my computer. Oh, hopefully I haven't lost everyone in the audience. Hope you're there. I've got something come up. Oh, still there, still there. I thought I lost you for a minute. Sorry about that, ladies. I hope you can hear me well, loud and clear. Um, I gather so, still got someone listening. So, yeah, I'm talking about the guillotine, like I like to call it guillotine, if you don't mind me saying so, because the structure, guidelines, setting up speed limits, nutrition for our schools, making sure our kids get all the right divided nutrition they need through school, education, um, making sure we've got the right NHS, the right equipment. Without all these things, would NHS be running smoothly? People, getting all the equipment they need. No, they wouldn't. There's equipment that comes from all different nations. You couldn't just have someone in charge of different parts of NHS. We've got NHS a big, all different constituencies. So it's all what governments governs. It's the governance of the UK, the sovereignty, absolute sovereignty of the UK. Anyway, so I hope you follow me, guys. Taking some. It's not a tuition. It's not a tuition. Just so you give a bit of respect when you listen to other people talking politics, because not a lot of people, give it a time of day. Don't acknowledge it. Don't realise how it comes into our everyday life. So I'm going to talk about the analytics and the blueprint of Parliament. The architects of Parliament, which I've studied, so I know. Cherry, Cherry, Charles Barry, and Augustus Pugin, like I was just previously explaining. The 1835 competition to redesign the palace was won by Westminster. The born architect Charles Barry, by then, the 40-year-old Barry was already quite a famous architect, having built several churches and won competition for his work. However, Barry's own architectural style was more classical than Gothic. I think they called it a Gothic Catholicism. Um, you know, rethinking back over my academic integrity. Read only a few months ago, 4 months ago, 3 months ago. Barry and Pugin turned for assistance in his drawings for the competition to Augustus Welby Pugin. Pugin also helped, um, well, not helped, but influenced the design of Castel Koch, which is spelled Koch. It's Castel Koch because it's Welsh, that's how they speak. That's how they pronounce their CHs. If you had a Welsh person spoke, that's how you'd know and get the gist of what I'm saying. It's true. A, a gifted 23-year-old Catholic architect and draftsman who devoted himself entirely to the pursuit of Gothic architecture. Pugin was in fact paid £400 by Barry for assisting him with these drawings. £400. How much I reckon £400 was back then? Absolutely a substantial amount. During the construction of the palace, Barry came to rely heavily on Pugin in the execution of these plans, and particularly in the matter of detail. Fittings and furnishings, indeed. It was Pugin who designed most of the palace's sumptuous Gothic interiors, such as various carvings, giltwork, panelling and furniture in the rooms, and even the doorknobs and spill trays. Controversy. There has, in fact, been much controversy with all lingers. It's not just about history. We're going to go because I want to talk about the blueprint before we go into today's modern society. Over the question on whether Pugin rather than Barry deserved the greater credit for all the architectural triumph of the Palace of Westminster, Pugin was nevertheless known to have displeased with the result of work, as he famously remarked to the acquaintance. All Grecians, sir, tutor details on a classic body. However, neither man would see their creation completed as they both worked long hours and endlessly worried about every detail of design and building of the palace. It was not until 10 years after Barry's death in 1860 that the new palace was completed, with his son Edward taking over the work. Pugin's fragile health suffered greatly from his exertions. He was committed to Bedlam and asylum for the instance, which is held at the site of the Imperial War Museum, for a short period and died soon after 1958. Let's think how Parliament is built and why it was built in such ethical style through religion. It's a bit religionated, like Catholicism, Gothic, Gothic Catholicism. Very, very. You got the red. You got all the pictures. You got Sir Oliver Cromwell. You got all them statues around the building of men who worked, who fought for, fought for their domain. Men at work, prime ministers at work. People saying they're not at work, but they're analytic thinkers, critical thinkers. They think outside the box. Critical thinkers, putting laws in place to make people, think about their action, making it safe for society. Also thinking, how can we? They've got scientists underneath them, making new technology. It's very, very important to know the facts about Parliament. You got, I mean, the ecosystem, the eco-friendly system, the exhaust emission fumes. They're all scientists that are, they're getting carbon oxide. They can calculate carbon oxide through an exhaust, collect it in a bag, counting the particles through a machine, and then they multiply it by 10 million cars that go up the M25 perhaps, and that's how they get the eco-friendly system to what we have today. So people need to acknowledge the differentials of the bigger scale of things, rather than, we can all sit there and say they haven't got a clue what they're doing. We've got more of a clue than the average thinker, because the average thinker doesn't have a clue about Parliament. I mean, I study religiously for, well, a lot harder the last few days. I've had somewhat intelligence of Parliament for quite a long spell. I was into media studies since 1995. This ain't something I just picked up in 5 minutes. This is something I've always took my hand to, but never gone in depth into the actual intelligence of what I am today. But I just want people to be a bit thoughtful when they come and only listening. I want them to think he's not a man that's just pick this up in a matter of minutes or a matter of a year or 2 years. I studied media studies since 1995, and I've always been respectful of what my granddad's virtue was as well. He was a World War II veteran, so studying history was always part of my heart at school, and religious studies. Like I put up a post about the bishops in. They was in New Zealand when I studied in religious studies, but there's also a big gang in Chicago. They there's probably more big of a gang, and there was obviously police force that couldn't maintain them. And I think their main they've got what they call him Godfella. The Godfella, he later died, got shot at a party outbreak in Chicago. Then the bishops The bishops evaporated, gave up. Anyway, into UK politics. That's a bit of a twist there, wasn't it? We're talking about politics, then we're talking about criminals. But yeah, I'm just telling you, now the law has gotten getting above these criminals. Let's hope they can today. They're doing good on it. Groups of six, putting a fine out. It's making people think otherwise about their actions. More police, better NHS. More Afghan interpreters eligible to settle in UK after rule change. Going into the formation, guys. More up to date news. We had a bit of history thinking there, wasn't he? Thinking outside the box with my history. Dozens more Afghan interpreters who worked the British forces in Afghanistan will be eligible to settle in the UK following a government decision to expand a relocation scheme. About 450 interpreters moved to the UK with their families under the original scheme announced up in 2013. But some of these who were ineligible said they were targeted by the Taliban. Defence Secretary Ben Wallace said expanding the scheme was the honourable thing to do. Under the original scheme, only those who had worked with the British on the front line for a year or more and were made redundant were eligible to apply. This means hundreds of Afghanistan interpreters who want to work for British forces in Helmand before they left in 2014 did not qualify for the resettlement in the UK, leading to criticism from MPs and some former British military personnel. I mean, the good thing about me is I could have jumped straight on fascism. I read things, I could have been straight on being fascist, but I look into the history of things, like the makeup of the World War One, World War Two. You see people jump on a bandwagon, putting my granddad's Muslims. I always think outside the box when it comes to fascism. Muslims, there's 2.5 million Muslims in the trenches of British soldiers defending our country. So you can never mock them supporting us, being part of our country as well. Now, following decisions between the Defence and Home Secretaries, the government has announced an expansion of the resettlement scheme. It means that Afghanistan interpreters who worked on the front line with British troops for 18 months or more between May 2006 and December 2014, but then resigned, will also be eligible to apply to resettle in the UK along with their families. Mr Wallace and Home Secretary Priti Patel announced the expansion of the relocation scheme on a joint visit to Stamford military training area in Norfolk, where they saw British troops prepare for development to Kabul working alongside former Afghan interpreters who were living in the UK. Mr Wallace has described the rule change as a thank you to the interpreters for their loyal service. About 100 more Afghan former interpreters will be eligible to apply to resettle under the new rules. Ms Patel said, "It's right that we do right by them. The very people that have served alongside our forces is one of the most hostile and difficult places in the world." All you can do is salute the way Priti Patel supports these people. That's all you can do. They've done their thing by our nation. Mr Wallace and Miss Patel met Dost, a former Afghan interpreter taking part in the training who had already claimed asylum in the UK. Dost did not qualify under the initial scheme. He had worked in Helmand as an interpreter for several years, but says he had to resign when he received threats from the Taliban. You know what I'm like on population growth. Um, but what can you say to guys that fought with British troops? One of his colleagues had also been kidnapped and killed. In 2010, he made his own way into the UK via Turkey and France to claim asylum, but under new rules, he would now be eligible to apply to resettle in the UK. He said he was very happy that the relocation scheme was being expanded, but added he was still worried about the safety of all those left behind. The expanded relocation scheme still excludes dozens of Afghans who work for British forces. Any interpreter who fled to the third country will not be eligible to apply. Those worked for the British forces for less than 18 months will also not qualify. I mean, it must be hard knowing that it worked with the British forces, but like I say, the, the ones that are letting in, they're fortunate. They're coming in. They're very fortunate. Um, I'm like fixated on population growth. So the ones that are in, I take your hat off to them, welcome. But the ones that we've got to have a hard board. I did say population growth. You can't be ifs and buts about some and ifs and buts about others and let them in. You've got to put a fine line down the middle and say that's enough. The BBC has spoken to one Afghan interpreter who worked for the army in Helmand for 7 months in 2010. We have given him an ally to protect his identity. Ali is now living in Kabul. He moved there to help the British embassy after he received threats from the Taliban. He says he says that the Taliban and the Islamic State group have no distinction as to how long you work for the Western military forces, like the British. He says they will kill you because you work for the infidel. The risk, Ali says, is the same for anyone who worked for the coalition, no matter how long. Britain does have a separate scheme for those who have suffered intimidation, which in theory allows Afghan interpreters to be resettled in the UK. But while a number of former interpreters like Ali have been relocated in Afghanistan, none has yet been moved to the UK under the intimidation scheme. Mr. Wallace and Miss Patel insist that the door is not closed. They say each individual will be will still be assessed on a case by case basis. While former interpreters like Ali welcome the expansion of the resettlement scheme, they still fear for the future. There are hopes for the peace talks now taking place with the Taliban, but those talks have also been hundreds of Taliban fighters released from prison. For Ali and his family, the threat has not gone away. Before moving on, guy, I just want to talk about mortgage schemes. I mean, some of us are not in a situation, not got a substantial amount coming in. But if you're getting work by luck, by chance or luck, there's good things in the pipeline for you guys. The mortgage prices are going to go down by 15%. I don't know what mortgage lenders are going to be like. That's the only problem. Are they going to be a bit wary because of the crisis to give out mortgages willy nilly? That is a different matter. That's something else you need to look into. But house prices are dropping by 15%. I think it's 15 or maybe 20. But yeah, that is good news, guys. But can you afford to get maybe you got a son that's in his teenage years looking to buy his first house. Is he working? There's maybe a good chance to try and get him on the market if you've got the money to help subsidise his finances. COVID PM considering new restrictions amid second coronavirus wave. Boris Johnson will spend the weekend considering whether to tighten COVID-19 measures in England after saying the UK was now seeing a second wave. I can't remember. I can't remember who it was. I see it yesterday. I was reading about it. Was it Israel? It might have been, yeah, Israel on lockdown. So we'll talk about a lockdown in October when kids are on their break. A lockdown in October. Is it going to be a 2 week? Yeah, 2 week lockdown in October. The government is understood to be looking at a ban of household mixing and reducing open hours for pubs and restaurants. I thought, yeah, that was already sorted, the pubs and restaurants. At least 13.5 million people, roughly 1 in 5 of the UK population, are already facing local restrictions. In London, additional measures were increasingly likely, its mayor said. Mr Johnson only has direct power over restrictions in England. The devolved governments in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland can set their own rules. Widespread growth of the virus has been recorded across the country, with cases doubling every 7 to 8 days. There were a further 4,322 confirmed cases on Friday. the first time the daily total of positive tests has exceeded 4,000 since April May. In Bolton, one returning holidaymaker who did not self-isolate and instead went on a pub crawl is being partly blamed for the town's spike in cases. Meanwhile, governments across Europe have announced new restrictions to tackle the surge in infections. Speaking on Friday, Mr. Johnson said he did not want to go into bigger lockdown measures, but that tighter social distancing rules might be necessary. He added, clearly, when you look at what is happening, you have got to wonder whether we need to go further than the Rule of Six that we brought on Monday. The government is understood to consider a short period of tighter rules across England a circuit break, which could involve closing hospital venues. However, schools and workplaces would stay open. Number 10 is also looking at limiting opening hours of pubs and restaurants across the country, as has already happened in many areas of North East England, where pubs had to close at 10 BST on Friday. Labour Deputy Leader Angela Rayner called for the government to hold an emergency COBRA meeting, look at the science and improve its communication so people can do the right thing. This is a positive day today. I'm not, and there's no criticism involved today. No criticism at all. As you can see, I'm mixing it up with the Prime Minister. We've got some Labour as well today. There's no criticism today. There's been a lot of criticism lately in the Parliament, but there's none today. Everything's running smooth, and as we always thought it would. If the government are able to do that, we'll be back then, she told the BBC. She also said it had been shocking to see how monumentally the government's test and trace system had failed. Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon and Welsh Minister Mark Drakeford are also calling for the COBRA meeting. I'll tell you, we keep seeing on TV, Dominic Raab, or should we say Nicolas Cage? Dominic Raab, Nicolas Cage. We had him on TV yesterday. Mum's not a great fan of his. I listen to him sometimes. Miss Sturgeon said the next few days will be critical to avoid further full-scale lockdown in Scotland. London Mayor Sadiq Khan said he's extremely concerned by evidence of the accelerating speed of coronavirus was spreading in the capital. We will be considering some of the measures which we have already been imposed in other parts of the UK, he said. I am of the firm view that we should not wait, as happened 6 months ago, for this virus to again spiral out of control before taking action. Daily cases rising sharply again. Daily confirmed cases of coronavirus in the UK. The government's scientific advisory group for emergencies, SAGE, said the R number, representing the number of people an infected person will pass the virus onto, had risen to between 1.1 and 1.4, although deaths remain at a very low level. SAGE said the rise in the R number shows that we are moving to a wider spread growth and transmission at a faster rate. The sharp rise in UK cases over the last 2 weeks comes amid ongoing problems with the government test and trace programme, leading to people to struggling to access tests. Former government advisor Professor Neil Ferguson, whose advice was crucial to the decision to go into lockdown in March, said to a 2-week mini lockdown could help reset the virus. We are perfect storm right now, people, as they've been told to, getting back to normal. Schools reopening a surge in cases, and therefore the testing system is under strain, he told BBC. Unfortunately, we do not have to roll the relaxation of measures back a little bit and get contact down in the population. Asked if it should mean more restriction on going abroad. He said the bigger risk was normally everyday interactions, which needed to be dialed back a little. The question is no longer we are, but we are heading. We are heading for another long lockdown. Yes, the number of people infected in hospital with COVID or dying from the disease are all at far lower levels than at a peak. Scientists They will quibble about the exact definition of a second wave, but all data points to rising numbers of infections. The government science advisors say the number is now doubling every week. If those trends continue, then infections could go from the estimated 6,000 a day to more than 100,000 by mid-October. Is that trajectory, which is not written in stone, the government is trying to change? These are questions for politicians, from whether it should be a circuit break to improve and test and trace. But the evidence suggesting that only 5 people are following the self-isolation rules when they get sick. There's also a question of all of us. I mean, ask yourself, if you are listening, are you taking restriction rules to false measures, or are you taking them strictly and taking action? Ask yourself, are you putting your COVID mask on? If not, are you washing your hands? Don't put your COVID mask on for yourself. Don't wash your hands for yourself. Wash them for others. Don't be narcissistic. That's a narcissist way of thinking. Protecting yourself before protecting others. Remember what it says in the Bible: love your neighbour like you love yourself. Exactly. Think about your neighbour when you put your mask on. Think about your neighbour when you wash your hands. The damage you can do to a disabled child that's got breathing problem. Think about the child. Don't think about yourself. You got to think outside the box when you think about doing things. I mean, you won't walk out the front door with no clothes on, because not just embarrassing yourself, but the children or young ladies in the street that see their innocent selves would, see your naked self. We put clothes on for a reason. Put your mask on for a reason. Wash your hands for a reason. No restriction for large parts of Northwest, West Yorkshire, the Midlands, come into force on Tuesday. The latest areas to see extra measures put in place include Lancashire, excluding Blackpool, Merseyside and Cheshire boroughs of Warrington and Halton. Additional restrictions are also being put in place for Wolverhampton, Owdby and Wigstone in Leicestershire, all parts of Bradford, Kirkelles and Calderdale. In total, nearly 4.7 million people were affected by the new restrictions, which banned separate households from meeting each other at home or in private gardens. I hope I'm getting this message across. I mean, I think you can't, really, it should be this, how good I'm getting at monitoring. I think this should be, everyone should have to come to attention. All my social media platforms I put on, everyone should have to come to attention and think, yeah, he's talking more sense than sense itself. Dominic Raab's bodyguard left a gun on the plane. Dominic Raab's bodyguard has been removed from the operational duties after allegedly left his gun on a plane at Heathrow. Imagine that. The terrorist got hold of the gun on the next flight. A cleaner is reported to have found the loaded Glock 19 pistol in its holster on a seat in the United Airlines flight after landing in London on Friday. The Foreign Secretary has been in Washington, D.C. to speak to US politicians about Brexit. Scotland Yard said an internal investigation was taking place. The cleaner raised the alarm after finding the weapon, the Sun has reported, and police boarded the plane before realising the gun belonged to one of Mr. Raab's close protection officers. A Metropolitan Police spokesman said, "We are aware of the incident on the flight into the UK on Friday, the 18th of September, and we are taking this matter extremely serious." The officer involved has since been removed from operational duties, whilst an internal investigation into circumstances taking place. Lapse in connection. The Sun reported the officer took off his holster and put it on his seat before escorting the Foreign Secretary off the flight, leaving it behind. Former Met Chief Superintendent Nick Alderworth told the BBC there were strict rules about the handling of firearms, but the human error does happen. This sort of thing is not common, but it does happen, he told the Today programme. It happens because human beings are in the system, and human beings operate under enormous amount of stress sometimes, particularly when they are managing armed operations in the middle of an armed operation. I mean, these people that do these close protection things, they are like we're like having we have human errors. They have human errors like any one of us. Maybe your wife's gone sick. Maybe daughter's gone into labour. Anything, anything's troublesome. I'm not going to think about too much negative stuff today. Like bills come to the door. Anything could take your mind off the job. This appears to be unfunctioning lapse in a concentration for which the officer will pay a price in their career. Inasmuch as they have been removed from the operational duties, which is something they probably love doing, and sadly for them, will no longer be able to do. I mean, how long have I been in now? About 7, 8 months I've been here. I am. And if I go out the front door, I've been out the front door a few times, and I've left the keys inside once. I left the keys inside once. Gone out the door, left the keys inside. We all make mistakes. He added that the Met takes such matters incredibly seriously. In February, a bodyguard for former Prime Minister David Cameron was investigated for reportedly leaving his gun in the plane toilet. In that incident, the gun was found by a passenger on the British Airways flight from New York to London. Mr. Cameron is entitled to continued security provided by the Metropolitan Police as former Prime Minister. I mean, if you left your gun in the toilet on a plane, that is a big, big risk because people drink on the plane. Imagine it went into the hands of someone with mental health. What would happen? What would happen? What would happen? Could be a stick up on the plane. You don't know. Anyway, leader of Labour. Labour Party leader, Starmer. Aims to build trust with new leadership slogan. We're not here to put parties down. I want people to come board and think, being amicable about all political parties. Everyone's got their own political revenue, haven't they? On the eve of the first virtual party conference, Labour have unveiled their new slogan and new leadership. It places under new management, the phrase Keir Starmer has been using since July, initially at Prime Minister's question, to distance himself from the previous leadership position on Russia and national security. I prefer Starmer to Corbyn. I mean, we'll have the same thing we don't like about someone. Maybe he's got a spot above his lip or wonky nose, like me, or anything could be their skin colour for a lot of people, which is really bad fascist statement. But keep the thoughts to yourself if that is the case, away from me. Circular strategists feel that this was a little too backward looking, defining him simply as not Jeremy Corbyn, and that the new form of words will wider appeal. A lot of weight will be placed on the short slogan shoulders. Pleased to meet you. Hope you guessed my name. First, it is designed to contrast favourably with Boris Johnson's leadership and build on Sir Keir's sustained attempt to portray the current government as lacking competence. Secondly, it dovetails with Labour's plan to introduce Sir Keir to the country. I mean, he's new to the environment. He's making big change to Labour. Is he a danger against Boris? Boris has got so much legacy behind him. You're not going to just step in his shoes just like that. It's like me trying to take his job. I might have a good eye for detail, but I couldn't possibly stand and take his job because he's been doing it since I was born. 37 years experience. This intended phase of leadership, it is felt, has been fully realised due to the coronavirus crisis. And insiders stress his new approach won't imply different from Mr. Corbyn, but from Tony Blair and Gordon Brown too. He may be helped in this when the internal inquiry under the chairmanship of Barry Martin Ford, an independent from the party who actually reports later this year It is likely to call for change in party's culture, with criticism of both staunch opponents and supporters of the Corbyn era. I mean, we know about Corbyn's anti-Semitism threats, which is a fascist statement. Like I say, from all different culture perspectives, you've got to be careful how we preach and politics. This allows Sir Keir to claim he's making a fresh start. You've got to accentuate the positive. Third, it will be developed by to try and eliminate a negative, which he may not be fully introduced to the electorate. The good news for Sir Keir Starmer is that his personal ratings are positive. For example, at the start of this month, YouGov's polling suggested 42% of voters felt he was doing a good job as Labour leader, while far fewer as 26% felt he was doing badly. I feel like this is a really good castle. I don't know if you think it's coming in fluent, but different strategies I've tried to put into play with the audience. That said, for 32, well, not for the interact with the audience for the listeners. That said, for the 32% of voters, the July is out. Hence the need of Sir Keir to reintroduce himself to voters. The bad news for Starmer is that while he was made very relatively positive impression since becoming Labour leader in March, the party has been lagging behind the Conservatives in most polls. As one Labour insider put it, the brand has been trashed. The aim now is to bring the party's standing closer to Starmer's. All round me are familiar faces, so the new branding, which will be used to party platforms and online content, is intended to convoy a sense of collective leadership. A Labour connected event, the party's virtual conference started on Saturday and will aim to give a platform to some of the shadow cabinet who are seen as potentially strong performers, including Andrew Rayner, Lisa Nandy, and Nick Thomas Simmons. They will be made to speak for the shadow chancellor, Annalisa Dodds. It hoped for a new team will become more familiar with faces to voters in the months ahead. So much for the personnel. The late Tony Benn used to say, "It's about policies, not personalities." I'm told there will be announcements for the next there'll be announced for the next few days, but the main purpose of the event will be to set out a vision rather than get dragged into detail for years from election. I mean, having a bit of characteristics about you, how you can emphasise your speech, how you can stand out differently from the crowd when you say your speech, makes a difference. So he's quite wrong there. I mean, it's all right having it's all right having your all your politics in the right formation, but if you don't sound it out very well, people in the audience ain't gonna listen to you. People on the TV and the media ain't gonna find you triumphant in your speech. Systems fall, walls come tumbling down. Although it's virtual conference, the party leader will get out and about to deliver his speech on Tuesday. Listen to this Queen speech. Some of her speeches are phenomenal. Theresa May was another good speaker. Boris Johnson again is a good speaker. He will be in Yorkshire, possibly in a seat that survived the Conservative onslaught. On the red wall, but pretty close to the debris, Elizabeth Truss is a magical speaker. It will make it clear that Labour's task of rebuilding will begin on this territory. I don't know. You might have your own people, your own politics, like I say, but I'm just saying from my perspective, who I think. But while we're gaining the trust of those who, until recently, backed the party is an essential precondition for winning power, Starmer knows it wouldn't be enough on its own. So seats which are Conservatives at Labour, early election defeats such as those in South England, will also be his focus. I like James O'Brien, even though he's very abruptive and he's not always with his callers. I like his speech. He's not in my party politics either, is he? But I like his speech. He's fluent. It flows nice. He knows, he knows where he wants to go. He knows he's in control. He knows he's in control of his demand. That's what I like. Hope's recovery also depends on doing at least a bit better in Scotland, which he visited for the first time since becoming leader this week. But the more immediate priority is to stern further losses in the next year's Hollywood election One vision. Although Starmer's strategists are emphasising fresh, forward-facing leadership, it seems clear that when he delivers his speech, the greatest contrast will be with the Corbyn era. He will set out his vision for the UK, the kind of country he wants to see, the kind of country it can be. He won't be as much waving the red flag as the Union Jack. He will try to convince those who have abandoned the party that their values and his have much in common. So it'll be an emphasis of patriotism, and the content is likely to be influenced by the Labour leader's Director of Policy, Claire Ainsley, former head of the Joseph Rowntree Foundation think tank, and author of The New Working Class. She has said the values espoused by the working class voters span the Remain Leave divide and can be summarised thus: family, fairness, hard work and decency, or, as one commentator put it, flag forces family. But she also argues the nature of the working class has changed as the economy has changed, as identity politics, rather than social class, have become more prominent. The new working class, he says, are more diverse and responding to signals that our political party is on their side, rather than appeals to the odd class labels. So expect to witness Starmer in a singleman in a conference speech. No direction home. Some of the party's left, however, fear that Starmer is in on the wrong track. They see perspiration, working hard to build up the credibility against the Conservatives, but why about lack of inspiration? Others simply want more evidence that his talk of values is not a precursor to ditching some of the radical policies both he and the party previously espoused. I mean, the only thing you can say about the difference between Corbyn and Starmer, Starmer's trying to keep away from, being xenophobia. He's trying to keep away from xenophobia, criticism of any other cultures. That's what he's trying to keep away from. But Corbyn does know his politics. Corbyn did know what Labour stood for. That's the difference. Socialist Campaign Group membership includes Jeremy Corbyn, the former Shadow Chancellor John McDonnell, and former Shadow Home Secretary Diane Abbott. I mean, I don't want to put Labour down, so me coming from my perspective, you might think I'm trying to put Corbyn down, but build him up at the same time to put Sir Keir Starmer down. It's a bit of a judgy one from looking from a Labour perspective looking in, if you know what I mean. I don't want to be putting Labour down. I'm trying to be amicable. Obviously, when you read things in the media and they're writing off Conservatives, I jump on the bandwagon. I don't really want to get involved in hatred. It's not about hatred in politics. It's about me getting where I need to be in the financial status of knowing knowledge within politics. They'll be holding a virtual rally of around 2,500 Labour members during the conference. Group Secretary, former frontbencher Richard Bergen, told the BBC it is important that the party use the conference to go beyond criticising the government's incompetence and now lays of the policies to defend people hit hard by this unprecedented job and public health crisis. Starmer supporter says he has the relentless focus on winning. That will mean not just putting the party on the leadership, but about how the leadership is exercised. So far, he's been radical in shaking up his shadow cabinet and in making changes for the party background operation. The bigger challenge is due course. Will be in selecting a small number of symbolic policies to signal to voters where he stands and abandoning others. His support amongst members appears to be wide, but this process will be to reveal whether it's deep. Keir Starmer's Conservative opponents have already made up his mind about his leadership. A spokesman has said he offered the same tired and out-of-touch policies as Jeremy Corbyn. Starmer's team will be hoping his target voters give him a hearing. A breach to reach a different conclusion in due of course. Thanks, ladies and gents. Please subscribe to Proclamation News and Gatherings. We're always tackling different things. Um, is the world round or flat? I'll give you 30 seconds to think. Is the world round or flat? I'll give you some examples to make you think. Is the world round or flat? You're in the Mile High Club at 37,000 feet. The plane's just taking off. You hit the route of the flight, 37,000 feet in pilot mode, 37,000 feet. You at look down at the world, look down at Earth. Is it round or flat? Is the world round or flat? Looking down from the plane, 37,000 feet down from the plane at the ground, at the world. You see dots of houses, clear sky, dots of houses. Looks flat, doesn't it? The world looks flat. The world looks flat. Yeah. I'll give you a few more seconds as I think. The world looks flat. The world flat or round. 10 more seconds. But just one of you might give me an answer. World flat or round. Have a think. Think outside the box. Critical thinking. Really thinking now. Thinking deep. Deep in thought. The world flat or round. I'll give you some examples. The world is round. You send something up into Earth, Jupiter hemisphere, looking down. The world is round. One more question before we head off, guys. Thank you all for coming in. I always do critical thinking things at the end to play games. Why do frogs jump? Frogs' toes are jump, don't they? They jump. Frogs jump. They don't walk, they jump. Perhaps if they're going to eat something, they might be on their all fours. They jump. Why do they jump? Why do frogs jump? We can talk about the most courageous animal in the ocean as well. Talking about frogs now. Why do frogs jump? I'll give you another 10 seconds. Frogs jump. Frogs jump. You could say this is the whole political thing that I'm doing, bringing a bit of wildlife involved. Things you don't think about outside the box. Frogs jump because they can jump away from their prey. That's why frogs jump. Frogs jump to get away from their prey. Frogs jump. But the most courageous animal in the ocean, the most courageous, you've got sharks, you've got whales, you've got all other animals. Everyone's got their own perspective what the most courageous animal is in the sea. Most courageous animal, fish, animal in the sea. You've got Loch Ness Monster, perhaps, if you want. What's the most courageous animal in the sea? My perspective, I've got Raynaud's disease. The most courageous animal in the sea. This animal eats fish. Give you a clue. Most courageous animal in the sea. I mean, anyone can be right in their perspective, can't they? But this is my perspective. I've got Stephanie Raynaud's disease. Most courageous animal in the sea. They eat fish. They can stand. Penguin. Why is a penguin the most courageous animal in the sea? You've got to have a good answer for your debate, haven't you? Why is a penguin the most courageous animal in the sea? Because it lives in Antarctica, the most freezing cold country in the world. If I was there, I'd be dead, wouldn't I? If I was in Antarctica, I'd be dead in about 5 seconds, 2 or maybe 3 split seconds. See how my feet are in the winter. See how my lips are in the winter. And no one could argue the case if that wasn't the answer. If that, that's my perspective. Everyone's got their own answer to politics. Everyone's got their own formation to politics. When people tuition people, they have to give you the benefit of the doubt for your answer. And that is my political strong answer. because doctors can argue the case, tuition can argue the case, because I would, without a shadow of doubt, be dead in Antarctica. But penguins are in my perspective, I think penguins are the most courageous animal in the sea. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. 50 minutes we've been flowing for today on P&G. We've had the analytics, the blueprint of Parliament. It's been great. I think it's been great. I feel really insightful. I felt really insightful at first. What's coming up, how I'm going to tackle the audience. If the audience listeners can enjoy it. Should I be up there with the greatest? To get up there with the greatest, you have to be a business. I'm not a business. I haven't got the business fund and the business backing. Soon we'll be up there and running. I mean, I should be up there and running. I've been going on Castbox for nearly 2 years. I've been doing YouTube. This YouTube, I've been on it just over a year, but I've had YouTube previous to that, and I was doing exactly the same thing what I'm doing now. Been doing it since about 2015. My voice, just trying to get my voice heard, people to monetize what I'm doing, and it's making sense. I want people to believe in what I'm achieving, and acknowledge what I'm saying is true. I could talk about anything within history. I could talk about sociological change, things that I'm going through in life. Everyone goes through sociological change. I could talk about history, um, which I don't think it'd be much of your relevance to society when you come in to listen to politics. I can bring up Cleopatra. I can bring up Charles Dickens, Mary Wollstonecraft. I can bring about Elizabeth First. I'm very royalty anyway, so I could talk about any monarchies, Queen Victoria, all them kinds of stuff. I'm not going to bore you to tears with just history. History is important, the root of the problem when we tackle things like xenophobia, especially when people start being fascist and you realise the root of the problem shouldn't have been a problem because we had 2.5 million Muslims supporting our country as well as other nations. You got to think about it. You got to think about history of things and why is it still going on in society today. It should have been, everyone has a heat at the moment argument. Everyone has it. It doesn't matter if you're an argument with a white man or a blue man, green man. You can be angry with whatever that person is. So I just want everyone to get off the high horse about the BLM. The authorities didn't want it to happen. I don't know why. Well, I can understand why, because authorities was the one that tackled that young lad in 2012, possibly. Is why. That is the reason why I sent up BLM, because that police officer shot that teenager. But I think they've gone one way about it, so that could be why it isn't set up. Maybe if they change their stance, the way they act, which they're protesting still recently, and there's been 97% of their protests have been nice, haven't caused no trouble. So who knows what the future holds? Maybe if they keep fighting, not fighting, literally fighting, but protesting in a sensible mannerism without causing any defect to society, it may be formed. Who knows? I'm not one to know. I'm below. I'm backbench going forwards. Should be front bench soon, but it's all a matter of time. It's all a matter of time, guys. But putting in hard work in day out, people enjoying the cast, appreciating it, realising I'm always on a good road to some sort of success. I never give up trying. God likes a try. Don't give up trying. Whatever your day job, don't give up trying. Always believing. Believing is receiving. And to believe it, you may well receive it. I just want to say thanks so much. God bless. It's the day before Sunday. People that live there Sunday like me, have a blessed day. If you don't, just do whatever you're doing in moderation, is all I can say. This is me 365 days a year. I enjoy it. The process is to give you good, valuable news, Flux News Daily. Thank you so much, guys, for watching in. It's Proclamation News and Gavins. Have a wonderful, afternoon now. God bless. Take care. One love. Speak soon. People on Castbox, I'm going to send you a link.